Installing recessed lighting is a great way to brighten up a room, and you can save thousands of dollars doing it yourself. But between the wiring, the spacing, and the layout, I know it can be overwhelming for beginners. So today, I'm going to show you 12 easy steps for successful install and the 2 biggest challenges you're probably going to run into and how to deal with them. Now, you're probably worried about wiring and how that's all going to work with this recessed lighting. And I know that because we did a poll and over 50% of you said wiring is your main concern. So I'm going to show you 2 things to look for that are right out of the gate. You're going to figure out if this is going to be an easy project or a little more involved. And don't worry if it's a little more involved, because I've got some solutions for you. So the first thing you want to look at is what kind of light switches do you have in the room and what do they control? So basically you're going to either have a regular on-off light switch or a 3-way switch. So if you're in a room with just one entrance, like an office or a bedroom, then you probably just have a regular on-off switch. So it's going to be off when it's down, or it's going to be on when it's up. And it's even got little text in there that says off and on it. Now, if you're in a larger room that has multiple entrances like this one that I'm in, then you probably have 3-way switches. When you look at a 3-way switch, it doesn't say on or off because it depends upon what's happening at either side, because it could be off when it's up or it could be on when it's up. It just depends upon the combination of the 2 switches. And if you're in an area that controls other parts of the house, you might have multiple switches like I have here in this room. So what you're looking for here, best case scenario, is that you have a switch or a 3-way switch that controls a central light in the room or a central fan. And that means that you have wiring going from the switch right up into the middle of the room that you can tap into, and that is great. Now the other scenario could be you don't have a light in the room and that switch actually controls an outlet. And that's exactly what we had in the front room that I installed lights in a few years back at my house. And if you're in this situation, unfortunately, that is going to be the more difficult, because now you're going to have to tap into that wiring that's going into the outlet and figure out how to get that up into the ceiling. But let's go to the next thing to look for, and that is what's going on up in your ceiling. So access to your ceiling and what's going on up there is probably going to be the biggest determining factor, whether this is just a 20-ounce bottle of Dew job, if it's a 6-pack of Dew, or if I need a whole 12-pack of caffeine to get me through the project. So again, here we have a few options. The first option is the room I'm in here. I am in a single-story house, so above me I have an open attic. So I know that I can get up there and look around, and I'm going to be able to access the joists and the wiring and see what's really going on. So the second option is that you have living space above where you're at. So there is no attic, you just have the ceiling space, which is going to be your floor joists of the room above you. Now, this one could be really good or really bad, and it just depends upon the ceiling joists that were used and how things were constructed. The only way to figure out what's going on up there is to take a look and see. So to get a look up inside of your ceiling, you're basically going to have to drill a hole and look in there. You can try to go through one of the fixtures if you have some accent lighting or something like that, but most of the times you're just going to get a face full of dust and not be able to see anything. Oh, golly day. So instead, I've got one of these little guys, which is a borescope inspection tool, little video inspection tool. So it's got this little wand here at the end, and it is basically has a camera, and I can see up inside there. And I just bought this thing. I think this one's around $100, but I know they have them as cheap as like $20 that'll hook up to your cell phone. And I've not really used this a ton, so I can't recommend it or not, but I'll have a link down below in the description where you can check out a couple different options. I'm gonna drill a hole and we'll see what we can see. All right, so we're gonna go right up here into the cavity and I can see what's going on here. And actually I'm able to record on this screen, which is pretty cool. So we'll see if we can put that into the footage. So if I go, looks like there is a joist. I got dust on there. So what's really nice about this is I can articulate the head there and see what's going on. But I definitely have solid wooden joists up there. Plus I can see the insulation and some spiders too. So that's an easy way to see what's going on up in your ceiling cavity. And if you have attic access, like I do, then you can just go up there and check. So let's go check that out too. All right, I'm gonna be heading up into the attic, and this is the most sketchy attic access I have ever even heard of. That's right, the attic access is above the exterior door, which is up in the carport. That's like 12 feet in the air. So I've got the ladder sitting on the steps, but let's just go. Hopefully your attic access is much, much better than this, and I can almost certainly tell you it will be. All right, so when you're up in the attic, this is what you're gonna probably see, blown in insulation, and our room is right over in this vicinity over here. So let's check it out. Most important thing is that you stay on some type of wood. Do not step in between the rafters and end up in your dining room. This is actually that tan light that is to the left of the fireplace. So we have solid studs, which is fine because we can run the electricity over the top. The next thing you're going to need to know, and the next thing on the poll you guys said you're most worried about, is the layout and spacing. So let's go through it one step at a time. I just recently did a buying guide on recessed lighting, and the ones that I'm going to be using are this Insignor 6-inch canless recessed light. And these are these thin wafer lights, and we'll talk more about these later during the install, but they are awesome. And these are 1,050 lumens per light. And they have a 120-degree beam angle. Both of those are going to be important in just a minute. So the next thing we need to know is how many lights do we need, and here's exactly how you figure that out. Basically, what we're looking for is the amount of light that we want in the total room. And depending upon what type of room there is, you're going to want different amounts of light. And these are going to be measured in lumens. And a lumen is just the total light emitted by a light source. 1 lumen equals to about the light that you would get from a tiny little birthday candle about a foot away. Now, on the other hand, a 100-watt incandescent light bulb is about 1,600 lumens. So looking at different types of rooms, you're going to need different types of lumens. The spot in your house that is going to need the most amount of light is going to be in the kitchen. And in the kitchen, you want about 35 to 50 lumens per square foot because, you're cutting up food. You want to make sure you don't chop off a finger and put it in the mashed potatoes. In a dining room, about 30 to 40 lumens per square foot because you want to be able to see that finger that's sitting there in your mashed potatoes. Now for a bonus room or great room, 20 to 30 lumens per square foot, because you might be doing some activities like playing board games, doing a puzzle, something like that. Or a bedroom or living room, you might be down to 10 to 20 lumens, because you don't need a lot of direct light. And of course, in all these situations, you can have task-specific light if you want to read a book or something like that, have a lamp on a side table. Now, depending upon what kind of room you have, we can start doing the math. And for this room, this is 24 feet by 15 feet, which is 360 square feet. So I'm going to be actually shooting for around 20 lumens per square foot because I know that that's just a nice amount of light that I like. So given the square footage of this room, that means I'm going to need 7,200 to 10,800 total lumens in this room. So now if we just do the math, divide that by the 1,050 lumens that each of my light is going to give out, that means I need somewhere between 7 and 10 of these in my room, and I'm going to go for 8. So when you divide it out and you do the math, having 8 lights at 1,050 will give us 23 lumens per square foot, and that is going to be perfect in this area. So you can go up or down for your room, and if you want to go high and then use a dimmer to bring it back down, that's also totally cool. All right, so now the next step we can get into is the spacing and the layout. The most common recommendation is that you should space your lights half the distance of the height of your room. So if you have 8-foot ceilings, you should space them 4 feet apart. I don't agree with that, but here's where that comes from. So earlier I talked about the beam angle of that light that I chose. And so indulge me and let me nerd out for just a minute. The beam angle on those lights is 120 degrees. So if you had 2 of these lights spaced 4 feet apart with a 120-degree beam angle, here's what that would visually look like. Now, of course, it's not harsh lines of light because the light does diffuse, but those would overlap just around 7 feet off of the ground. And so that's kind of where that recommendation comes from, is that you have full coverage and overlapping of light all the way around the room. But honestly, you don't need that much light. So let's see what that would look like if we spaced them 7 feet apart. Now you are just over 6 feet off of the ground is where that overlap would be. So if you start thinking about the overlapping of the light and dark spots in the room, you want most of that overlapping to be above your head. So even with a 7-foot spacing, that light overlap and coverage goes all the way over to the height of over a normal person. I'm definitely a normal person because I'm 5'10" and 3/4. And with these high-powered lights, you're gonna have a lot more light than you really think you need. Now that being said, if you look at the lights from above, because we actually have a grid, the dark areas are gonna be kind of in the center of a 4-light grid. So you could have an area that didn't have light overlap in the middle, but honestly, it's just not that big of a deal. Actually, in the lights that we installed back at my house in our front room, we had them spaced 92 inches apart, which is well over 7 feet, and it is just fine. If you're in an 8-foot room, staying under 6 feet is great. If you're in a 9-foot tall room, staying around 7 or 8 feet should probably be fine as well. All right, so at this point, now that I know I need 8 lights, now it's basically just getting even spacing off of those walls. And you do want to make sure that the distance between the lights is about twice the distance between the light and the walls. So if I have 3.5 feet from the wall to my light, then I'm gonna have 7 feet to that next light. And you have to fudge it just a little bit. So if you look at actually how we're gonna lay it out, I'm gonna have 5 feet 8 inches between my lights and 3.5 feet from the walls. And basically that's just because I don't want to have my lights too close to the wall. So it is a little bit of a science and a little bit of an art, but this is how ours is going to look, and I'm going to start laying them out here. All right, so now we can start laying everything out on the ceiling. And I'm wearing gloves because when you're up here working on the ceiling, the last thing you want to do is get your grimy fingerprints on the ceiling and have to repaint everything. So wear some gloves. We're gonna be 3.5 feet off of this back wall. I'm actually gonna do the same thing, so it's nice and symmetrical off that corner. Now I can grab a laser line and lay them out going down this way and have a nice straight line. So I've come down to the far end of the room. I have the position for the last light. Now I'm gonna connect the laser line in between them, and then I can fill in the other two using the spacing in between the lights in the center of the room. All right, here's a little tip to get your measurements because you're gonna be up on the ceiling, and how do you get your starting point? I'm just gonna put a little screw up there into the mark that I already made so I can hook the tape measure on the side of that screw and then get my measurements going down the line. And my next mark is gonna be 5 feet 8 inches. What? Oh, that's my hand. Don't put your hand in front of the laser because then you can't see it. Now just do the same thing on the other end. Now the key is, did I get the right measurement in between these two that I just marked? So I'm gonna kind of eyeball this. That's good enough for government work. So I'm gonna use this mark and the other one in the corner and use the laser level to get this line. Then I can just repeat and use the same process and do all the ones on the other side of the room. And while I'm doing that, I wanna tell you about something new from today's sponsor, Intuit. If you're running or managing a growing business like I am here, then here's a hard truth. What got you here is probably not going to get you where you want to go next. At Fix This Build That, we're not just building projects. We're running a media company, we're managing partnerships, and selling woodworking plans and 3D prints through our e-commerce shop. And tracking expenses and profitability can get real tricky when you're trying to manage across several different businesses, especially when you're using a spreadsheet like I used to do. Now, I quickly upgraded to QuickBooks Self-Employed and then went on to QuickBooks Online after that as the business grew. But now I'm realizing we need more than accounting and just tagging expenses. What we really need is deeper insights, instant visibility across all the moving parts of our business. And that's why I'm excited about Intuit Enterprise Suite. It's not just accounting, it's like putting your entire business under one dashboard. We can manage multiple entities or revenue streams like project builds and digital plans. It'll also let us track profitability by project, service, or even client type. So we can have a clear picture of what's actually making us money and where we might need to make some changes. So if you're a key business decision maker in construction, e-com, or pro services, especially if you're growing fast, this kind of system can be a game changer. It helps you cut through the chaos, make smarter decisions, and grow your business with confidence. You can learn more about Intuit Enterprise Suite with the link down below in the description. And a big thank you to Intuit for sponsoring today's video. Let's get back to the install. All right, now you can finally start getting to the exciting part of the project, cutting huge holes in your ceiling. This guy is specifically made for recessed lighting, and you'll see them anywhere between 6 to 6 1/4, 6 3/8. So even though these are 6-inch lights, the actual size of the light is much larger than that. So if we line this up here, you can see that this is actually gonna fit in just nicely. But if you just start drilling with this guy, you're gonna make a huge mess. So there's a secret weapon I have that is one of my favorite tools ever. And it's this rubber boot here. This is like a rubber shield. So you take your big hole saw and you put it in this hole in the boot and then stick that in your drill and tighten it up. And so this guy is gonna capture all your drywall dust while you're cutting. So I put this up against the ceiling. It has a nice seal, a ceiling seal, and I can just rip this bad boy and get it going. And all that dust is gonna be right inside this bowl when I pull it off. You're gonna have a little bit of escape, but this thing just saves such a huge mess. I absolutely love it. I'm gonna have a link down below in the description for this and all the other tools that I've used for this install in case you wanna check those out and make your install a bit easier. But I'm gonna go ahead and start drilling these holes. All right, and we are through. And absolutely no dust has escaped. So I'm just gonna leave this there for just a minute to let some of that cloud fall down in there. Perfection. So they do have a little foil radiant barrier. I don't know if that's like on the back side of the foam or if they just put that down, but I'm gonna go ahead and cut that out. And then that should reveal just the insulation, which there we go. So they probably put that up there before they put in the blown in insulation, which now you can see. On the second hole, we ran into what would be a project killer if I was using can lights instead of these slim wafers. So I literally hit just right directly into the center of a joist. So now if you're trying to stick up a can, that would definitely not fit because you've got your joist here, you're not gonna cut that, your house is gonna fall down. But with these slim guys, we can fit right on top of that. And then the junction box, which I'll show you a little bit here in a minute, can just tuck up right to one side or the other. And that is why these are such great lights to use and the easiest to install by far. I believe they say discretion is the better part of valor. And today I am going to use a little discretion and I'm actually going to remove these can lights and see if it'll fit that same hole and reuse this, because I feel like using the hole that's already there, it's gonna make a lot more sense as far as time and constraints. And it also will kind of give a little bit more accent to the fireplace. And if I don't like the way it looks, I'll just leave a little bit extra space. I could always just pop a new hole here and the move would be extremely easy after I get the install done. So I'm gonna shut off the power, pull these out and see if we could just retrofit right into this existing hole. All right, now we are at the step that you have all been fearing, which is the wiring, which you don't have to really fear it at all because it's fairly easy as long as you have the right tools. And so in this room, I know that I have the light switch that is going up to the fan that we're gonna tap into the circuit that goes into the light kit. Now, in general, the wiring is really easy. You just have to get connection to one of the lights and then go from there and daisy chain in series to each of the other lights. So you hit one of them, it doesn't really matter which one you tie into. Actually, for this install, I think I'm gonna tie into this one over here since it's in that same stud bay as the fan. So once I tie into it, then I can run a wire to the next one, to the next one, to the next one, and so on until I get to all of them. So if you do have attic access like I do, you're gonna see exactly how I'm gonna do it. But if you don't have that attic access, you see we've got joists right here and they're probably gonna be every 16 inches. The joists are maybe 24 inches. You're gonna have to drill a hole through each of those joists as you're running across down to the next hole. So you can do that either by opening up a hole and reaching up in there and drilling through and running the wire, or they do make some specialty tools to do that that'll help you. So the easiest way to drill through your joist is gonna be with one of these auger bits. This is a 6 foot long bit, and actually the end I have on here is for drilling into dirt. They make ones that are specifically for drilling through wood, and they have an auger tip on the end here. I don't have that one currently, but the key here is this little hole right here. So you just chuck this guy up into your drill, and you can see this thing is huge. And then what you can do is get in, and you want to get as close to the ceiling as possible for parallel, and then you just drill through, and you can drill through as long as you don't have more than 6 feet to go. You can drill through into the next stud bay, which we could easily reach on ours here. After you've drilled through, you pull the head of that out through the hole you're trying to get to, and that's where this little hole comes in handy. And basically you would grab your wire, then you can stick that right in between there, and then just loop it like this. And then you could do some electrical tape here so it won't catch anything. And then you pull it back to the hole that you drilled it from. So you're pulling it through those holes that you drilled in the joist without having to get up into the ceiling. So this is the tool that you need to drill through those solid ceiling joists if you don't have attic access. So I'm using 14.2 Romex, which is appropriate for a 15 amp breaker, which is what I'm on. So use what you have your breaker for. If you were on a 20 amp breaker, you'd want to use 12.2. So I'm just gonna run this straight up, keep pushing to make sure it's gonna come through the insulation. Then I can run it over to the fan and make that connection to get things started. I'm gonna make a little knot so that it doesn't fall through. There we go. All right, I'm gonna head back up the ladder of death and see what's going on in the attic. Okay, there's the wire that I pushed up, and that means that the ceiling fan is right over there. So let me see if I can tap into it. All right, so I found where the fan ties in, and you might have to undo some insulation, but I found that wire there. And then looking down there, there's a box that's installed in there. So I'm actually gonna go down there and take the ceiling fan apart because the wiring is actually in the ceiling fan, not up here. So we have a typical three-way switch here where we have a neutral, which is white. We have two hots, one that is black, one that is red, and then we have a ground. And so the black hot here, this one is going to the fan, and the red one was connected to the blue wire in the fan, which is the light kit, but this fan doesn't have a light kit. So we're gonna tap into that. So I'm gonna knock out one of these holes in the junction box, run another wire in there, and then tap the hot of that wire into the red, and then now we will be connected to the three-way light switches. And I'll also attach into the neutral and ground, so we're all connected, and then we can start running everything else. Now all these other holes are all covered up with blown-in insulation in the attic. So to help me find them, I'm just gonna take some little offcuts of wire, and then I'm gonna wrap some blue tape around the end. And then that's just gonna make a little flag, so it'll be sticking through the insulation, and I should be able to see it. And let's see if I can get these to stand up there. Hopefully that'll allow me to see it when I'm up there. We'll see. All right, we're back up in the attic, and the little flags worked perfectly. We got one there, another one here, there, over there, you might be able to see it, and then there's another blue flag right back there. All right, now I'm gonna fish that one in there, go downstairs, make the connections. Then we can basically just wire, bounce it across. And we got the wire installed and all secured up there. I'm gonna use these little Wago 221 lever nuts, which these are great because it's gonna be really easy to tie things in, especially with 3 of them. I'm gonna put in the neutral, which I'll just be able to put in the neutral for the fan when I reinstall this. Now the red one will just be connected to my lights. And for the black, that will be connected to the fan when I reinstall it. We'll go ahead and do the grounds on the Wago as well. All right, so this is all ready for the fan to be installed. Now let's move over to the first light. Now to wire up these lights, we do have the push connectors in here. So these are not the Wago, but you just push them in and we can connect the wires. But for the wires coming in and out, we wanna make sure that they have strain relief and clamping on them so they won't pull out. So there's 2 types you can use. You have this little plastic push-in one here, and then you have the metal screw-down one. So I prefer the plastic ones because they're just easier and faster to put in. So whichever one of these you use is fine. Just make sure that you have those wires secured inside the box when you close everything up. So now all I have to do is just cut my wire here, leave enough room to go into the box. And I will go in one side of the box and then I'll connect back through it and link over to the next hole for the next one. And that's the daisy chain that will just continue around the room. I'll just use the push to connect and go the black with the black wire, white with the white, and the bare with the green. I get the next length of cable as I fish through, and I'm gonna go ahead and fish everything through and then wire the rest of them all together. All right, all the wires are fished around the room now, and that was a huge pain in the butt. All these people who say, I don't have attic access, believe me, attic access is not all it's cracked up to be. I would much rather be just drilling through joists. Now, if you have two people and you have somebody feeding wire up and somebody up in the attic, that's gonna be way easier than doing that dance of up and down, up and down, up and down, because that got old real quick. But now, let's get these things wired. Now I could take the wire and just run this into the other side. Now we can just strip the wires and plug them in to the other side of their little push connectors. Now all you have to do is just tuck these back into the box, close the lid, and tuck that away. There are some holes for securing it on the back, so you can secure that in there. Just kind of lay it up in there, honestly. And then we're gonna connect this to the light in just a second. So I'm putting the nitrile gloves back on because I do not want to get my fingerprints all over the ceiling. Now to install this is super easy. All you do is get these little connectors here, line them up, and there'll be a little notch that you can make sure that you're in the right position. There we go. Then you can just screw that together here and that'll make a nice secure connection. Now, as we put these in, I have this beam right here, but all I have to do is go on either side of it and it's gonna fit in there just perfect. Tuck in all this insulation. Boom. So easy. It looks perfect as you put it in there. They have a little bit of insulation sticking out. There you go. One down, 7 to go. Now, one important thing to note, because I do have this blown in insulation there, and if you are putting in these lights wherever there's insulation on top, these are IC rated. So you want to be looking for that rating. IC stands for insulation contact. So if they're IC rated, you can have insulation right on the back of the light. So you don't have to worry about clearing that away. If they do not have that designation, you need to get a certain area around there. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but you can't have insulation right on top of it because of heat. Could be a fire hazard. But make sure you look for that. It's actually right here on the back of the light, and it should be on the listings online. And the last one's always the easiest because you've only got one set of wires to deal with. Now, before you turn the power back on, it is a great time to install a dimmer switch. So like I mentioned before, especially if you went a little bit on the heavy side with lights, you're gonna want a dimmer. Now, this is a Lutron LED Plus toggle dimmer. This is the one that I prefer, and it works well with most LEDs. So I have a link down below in the description for this one. I've tried others and they do not work. So this is one I've had success with. I'm sure others will work, but I like this one. This is just a direct replacement for this switch here. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull this switch out and then we'll get this thing wired up. Before you start poking around in these switches, make sure that your power is off. You can get a non-contact voltage detector and it will light up red if there is power, or it'll just stay green and not make any sound if it is all off and you're safe to go. All right, we're good to go, but something is very strange here. So this is weird because this is a three-way switch, but it is only wired up as a two-way switch. Now they are the red and the black, which is what you would need, but you would also have a neutral or common over here. Now, I am not an expert on three-way switching by any stretch of the imagination, so I may be saying something wrong, but several things are going on here. One, we don't have a ground. That's not good. We also don't have that. So this is just set up as just a normal switched outlet, which makes me think that, well, it has to be. This can't be a three-way switch with that other one, so I don't know what's going on. And then when I pulled out the fan switch, the fan dimmer, same thing, no ground is hooked up, and we also do not have a neutral here. Not exactly sure what's going on, but I'm gonna go ahead and wire up this dimmer, and maybe we'll just have control at this one outlet for the minute until I can figure out what the heck's going on. All right, and of course these are backstabbed because, you know, why not? If you've ever had problems releasing the wire on a backstab, this is exactly what you need. This is a 1/8 inch flathead screwdriver that fits into the back of these perfectly and just releases the wire. When in Rome, I'm just gonna backstab this just to test it out and see if it works. And I am gonna go ahead and hook up these grounds because I don't wanna get electrocuted. All right, let's see how we did. All right, this is great. Oh, this is so much better. Now let's check out the dimmer. Oh yeah, there we go. Now there were definitely some weird things going on with the wiring. When I came over here to check it out, the three-way switch that I thought was also controlling the lights was hooked up to nothing. Literally absolutely nothing. I'm gonna have to explore this. So there'll probably be another video on three-way wiring, but at least now you know how to install your recessed ceiling lights and to make it look nice and bright in your room. If you're still unsure on what LED lights to buy, I've got the buying guide queued up for you right there. I'm Brad. Until next time, get out there and build something awesome.